welcome to the FSF Podcast. As a reminder, this is the show that is made by nerds for nerds. So if you found your way here, welcome to our nerdery. Today, our guest is an amazing actor, writer, producer who's been on many of the shows and movies that you have loved over the years. There's been several that I have wanted to talk to him about. That's why he's here. I'm excited about that. Whether it was the guitar-playing one-hit wonder-making genius, Jimmy from That Thing You Do, or it was Jonah Hex in the Arrowverse series, or maybe you're more familiar with him as Justin Wise from Blue Ridge. Either way you know him, I'm excited to welcome Johnathan Schaech to the FSF Podcast. Welcome to the show, Jonathan.
Hey, I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So like I said, we're a bunch of nerds, and so a nerd loves a good origin story. In pre-show, you and I were talking about your character Jonah Hex, his origin story, all those different type of things. And so we love a good origin story. So in the origin of Johnathan Schaech, what got you to the point where you said, this is what I want to do for a career? What made you think that, or pushed you towards work in the entertainment field?
You know, I struggled in college. I couldn't read the textbooks. I had a really hard time. I just remember these textbooks and having to sit down and trying to get the information into my brain and then testing on it. And I just couldn't do it. I really struggled. I even went to my professors and I was like, okay, so can people read this kind of stuff? Like, this is really hard to read. And I went to my roommate who was his first language, was like Kenyan or something. He was from Africa. His third language or fourth language was English, and I had him read it to me one time, and he read it much easier than I did. So I knew I had a problem, and I knew I needed to. I wasn't going to be successful with my life, and I made a decision after taking one acting class in college that I was going to be an actor.
Really?
Yep.
That's cool.
And so I learned later on in life that I'm dyslexic. So
Okay.
that's why I couldn't read the textbooks. But no one told me that at the time. They were like, do this, you'll be fine. It was just like
Right.
no one had a solution for me. And yeah, I figured out that I stood a better chance of going back and forth and being creative. I was very creative at the time. I
Mm-hmm.
was an artist. I loved painting and drawing. So I don't know how that turned into acting, but it did. And
Sure.
I found my way in that way. Yeah.
So what methods do you use or did you use at that time, and do you still use them to help you to be able to read your scripts, memorize your scripts, get yourself ready for acting roles?
My scripts, they look like an artist's journal. Like I just draw everything out. I doodle to
Mhm.
memorize my lines, and that's how I really memorize my lines. I put the word to an image and created this like a painting with every scene. And it probably wasn't the easiest way, but it was my way. It was the only way I found. I did it a million, like 1,000 times. I'd run my lines, but in the process of drawing it, so that I would remember that image. If I got, it didn't roll off my tongue. I could think back and think where I was and what it was all about. And so, yeah, I was drawing and painting, but I learned in time that if I hear it, I don't forget it. So now I just use audio programs to, read the scenes or the script to
Mhm.
me. Um, yeah, so that I've learned like audio, and then if I take I ask for more time. I just always need more time than anybody. If they have a certain amount of time, I always need to have a little bit more time. So always ask for more time.
That's really cool. Yeah. I know other people who use the audio programs to help them, and it will read them to them, because they're better auditory learners than they are visual learners. And so that part makes sense to me. I had never thought about the doodles and having images tied to certain words to help spark that in your memory. That's a really cool concept.
Yeah, you should. I'm sorry, you should see some of my scripts. My old scripts, I kept the ones where I did it the most. Like That Thing You Do. It's like it's an artwork. It's all a piece of art. Yeah.
That's really cool, man. Yeah, I think that's a neat way to handle it, because I mean, there's no wrong way to learn. If that what you do, you use what works for you. But And I think that if you found something, especially that early, if you're able to find something that early on that worked for you, that's fantastic. So
I did
yeah,
learn
that'd be.
that there's a lot of actors who are dyslexic, like Anthony Hopkins, Tom
Mhm.
Cruise, and one thing about being dyslexic is you get to the root of what it is. Like you have the meaning and the understanding. The words are the last thing to come.
Okay.
So there's a different way of, you know, acting teachers actually teach you like to find the purpose, the goal, and what you're fighting for, and let the
Hmm.
lines come after that. Like the lines are meaningless. You just need to fight for your goal. So I think dyslexics do that innately, like survival mode, to be able to really try to get to the
Oh, sure. Yeah.
understanding what these words are. So there's a benefit to being a dyslexic actor.
That's really cool. All right. Well, that's a neat origin story. And I
Yeah,
think maybe the first one I've had described that way. So very cool. All right. So let's move on to talk about the series Blue Ridge, which I know you were recently working on. You're doing some things there, and kudos to you on your success for that. But before we talk about anything Blue Ridge related, I want to jump into something else. Now, I read that you're 54 years old, correct?
correct.
Okay. I'm 47, so you're only 7 years older than me, and I'm going to go ahead and say it. You're a good-looking dude. Uh, you're pulling off 54 very well, sir. And Muscle and Fitness did a really big piece on you, and so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that article, things leading into it. When did you discover that fitness and a fitness routine needed to be a more important part of your everyday and what you do and how you do?
When I was in college and I was trying to figure out, what it was, I was played lacrosse for University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and I was little. I was in high school. I was a 98-pound wrestler, and so I started lifting weights because I kept getting cut from the teams, and I just trained really hard, like really learned about bodybuilding and building my body up, and I read all Muscle and Fitness. I read Muscle and Fitness all the time. So yeah, I learned that I was an athlete, and that you know, and then when I became an actor, my what I was good at was anything embodied. Like I was really good at physical stunts and very good at
Okay.
action oriented things, and so I always kept my body fit, and they always hired me for that very reason. I did a film called How to Make an American Quilt. It was the first time they actually had a trainer train me for the role. And so that's been my go-to, I think, the body,
Okay.
training the body.
Training the body. Okay. So how cool was it for you then being having someone who read Muscle and Fitness as a young man to have them come back and do a feature on you to talk about your muscle and fitness?
Well, yeah, that was I love that article. I thought it was really well done. I thought I was grateful that they wrote such beautiful things about me. Um, and all my, being a father, like I fit for fatherhood was always my thing. Like, my little girl, she's 4 years
Mhm.
old. I'm 54, about to turn 55. So when she's older, I'm gonna be an old man, age wise. But I don't think it's fair to her that I don't stay in the best shape that I possibly can. The things that I can change, I change, and my body is one thing that I've learned how to, put proper food into it, train it a certain way. I have more energy that way. I could be there for
Mhm.
her. I could pick her up still, even though that hurts more than anything.
No, that's cool. That's a great outlook on it. As a father myself, I understand. I don't try to pick up my kids anymore. I got started early in life, so my youngest is 17. That's really gonna hurt if I try that. So
Well, man, being a father is boy, it's the hardest thing I've ever done, the most
it's a big.
gratifying. Yeah,
Exactly, right? It's a huge responsibility, but it's also at the end of the day one of the, like you said, most gratifying things you're ever going to do. Um but it's cool that you have that outlook, and that's your prospect as to why you do this and everything else. I don't think enough fathers actually have that same outlook. So I think that's really cool, man.
thank you.
All right, very cool. Well, kudos to you, and I'm sure your daughter, when she gets older, that will be something she appreciates moving forward. So, speaking of Blue Ridge, is how we got to this whole part of it. Now, I understand that the our last episode of Blue Ridge for the season is going to be airing soon. And so this is something that's transferred from being a movie to being a television series. So, what do you appreciate most about Blue Ridge as in the television format over the movie format?
Well, it's the same storyline all the way through. So it's about a man who goes to a small town in the South to be closer to his family. He's changed his job from being a military man to a
Mhm.
sheriff in this town, so he'd be closer to his family. And he thinks it's going to be an easier job than what it is because every single time something happens in that town, he's got to figure it out. In the same time, he's trying to win his wife back, bring his family back together.
Mhm.
So when we made the movie, I had literally just left California, moved to Nashville, Tennessee for my family, so that I could be closer to them and not be a part of this grind, this this treadmill workout
Mhm.
that they had out there in California. I didn't want to do that anymore. So I moved to
Sure.
Nashville, Tennessee, and to hold my family close and to get my son in these schools out here, be around my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, closer to my
Mhm.
family in Maryland. So I felt like I was doing the same thing my character was doing. Art was imitating life. And then when they called me up and said they wanted to turn it into a series, that they had done very well with the movie, and they could see, from the response of the audience that people would really gravitate towards it, and that we could have a show that really would resonate with a lot of people. Uh, that right there alone, something that's entertaining, is the most important thing that we could put out there. So I was thrilled that we got this opportunity to turn this movie into a series and just carry the characters along, and the people. I have to tell you, the people that are making it. I worked with Tom Hanks in That Thing You Do, and I say this in
Mhm.
all my interviews. If Tom Working with Tom and Gary Getzman was like the pinnacle of my career. It was like the best thing I have ever did. It was the most fun. They were the most kind. I felt good off. When I wasn't working, it was when I was working. I was challenged. Um,
Mhm.
and the same thing with Blue Ridge. The people are very kind. They strive for success. Like good work, very good work, and it's achieved in a manner which is kind and on time. No one's There's no craziness around it, like which breeds more kindness, and everyone's taken care of. And they really the creative aspects of it are enriched because of these guys being so um, kind is the word. I got
Right.
the word kind in my mind. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, I think sometimes people worry that there's a, when something gets adapted from a movie into a television show, that there's something lost, and that
Right.
there's a change of the characters, there's a change of the storyline, the change of what the character's motivation was, or things like that. But that doesn't seem to be the case with Blue Ridge,
Yeah, I think the only thing that really changed was the hat that I wore. Like, I wore a fisherman's hat in the movie, and then I got to
right?
wear a literally a sheriff cap in the
Right.
TV
Yeah, you're
series.
wearing more of a ball cap style in
Yeah.
the TV show.
So those are the things that changed. My deputies changed because one of our deputies couldn't make it because she was on the TV series The Chosen.
Oh,
So,
okay.
she's doing really well, but we do miss Laura Silva very much. But we got great. I love my deputies; they're fantastic, and the storylines fit perfectly with the series. So that was the only big change I think from the one to the other. Um,
Yeah, it seems to be a pretty seamless flow from one to the other. It doesn't seem that anybody has, other than the one who decided to keep with her old show, whatever. Uh, but it seems to be pretty seamless otherwise, and a good experience for you. So I'm happy to see that. So, but let's talk about my first experience in meeting Johnathan Schaech. Uh, or at that time, I knew you as Jimmy Mattingly in the movie That Thing You Do. And I'm sure you talk about this movie quite often. And I just have one quick question about it. because this is a movie that my wife and we saw it in the theater, and we said the second this comes out on DVD, we're going to buy it. So I have, and since that time, I bought it on DVD, Blu-ray. I own a digital copy of it. We absolutely love this movie. We take it with us on trips. We watch it on airplanes, everywhere we go. It's just one of those movies that's kind of become part of our family core. We watch it all the time. And when something doesn't work out right around the house, we oftentimes walk around just going, I quit. I quit. So I had to tell you that so I could ask you this. I read that somewhere in order for you guys to be the Oneaters, in order to play the roles, the four of you either had to learn how to accurately play the instruments, or you had to fake it really well. Is there any truth to that? And if so, do you still play the guitar?
Yeah, so when I was cast, I didn't know how to play the guitar, and nor could I sing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Steve Zahn could play some; he could pick.
Mm-hmm.
Ethan Embry could play the bass. Tom Everett Scott could not play the drums. So what they did was we had private trainers that we trained. I felt like we trained all day. I know that even when I wasn't, I still trained all day because
Right.
I had to do vocal lessons as well as playing the guitar. Now they told me when we first started that they were no matter how good I got at singing, they weren't going to use my voice. They already had what they wanted to do, and because the movie revolved around this one song, they
Right.
they couldn't take that risk and not to put that pressure on me. So not to worry, just to focus on my acting, which coming from Tom Hanks, you just focus on the acting.
Yeah. No
Um,
pressure.
yeah. So yeah, we practiced and then they put us together and we just became a band. We really became a band because we were working really hard towards a goal, and then they put us all together to work towards that goal. And they would, you know, I they're good coaches. I think Gary Getzman knew that we should perform prior to actually filming so that we wouldn't have the jitters. And we started
Mm-hmm.
perform. We performed in front of everyone at the table reading. Um, and look, I could play those songs. I could play some other songs, but I never became a guitarist. It was overwhelming. Um, the big thing of I play musician. I'm not a musician.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I love it, I would wish now that I live in Nashville, I wish I could play the guitar so I could just go play for some of my friends out here in
Sure.
the local venues. But I'm just not that guy. I don't get up at weddings and play my song. I just don't do it. It was thrilling, but I learned the craft of acting by doing it because I learned everything in the character needed to do. He was a musician, um, and he was a singer. And the reason why I won the role to begin with is because I probably was the only one that auditioned and sang, "I quit, I quit, I quit." It was I quit, Mr. White." That was the line, but I sang it and I won the role.
Oh,
So
that's cool.
yeah,
So you improv that during your.
yeah. Yeah, I read it, and I was working with an acting coach, and he said, he's a singer, sing it. And I was like, oh my god, yes, that's it. And so I even pretended like there was a microphone up there. Tap, tap,
Uh huh.
I. And as soon as I did that, man, I watched in the corner of my eye Tom Hanks just go, and I was like, I won the role, I'm in.
Oh, that's a very cool story.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Even,
I always
even,
wonder.
even I tell you this. So I remember doing it, and then I sang it, and then it was the end of the scene, and I literally walked out the door. Just with the inner smile, like I just won. I just changed my life. I just won Tom Hanks over. He's laughing, and he came out and got me. Get back in here, kid. Yep.
That's cool. Yeah, that's cool. Um,
So there's a
yeah.
great connection between that thing you do in Blue Ridge and
All
there's
right.
one of the guest stars is one of the Wonders. I got one of the Wonders to come out and play it. Probably the most critical character in the whole storyline.
Nice.
I know. Hopefully, I do it every season. I bring a new Wonder out. and hopefully Tom Hanks will come out there and play a part as well.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's there's so many things about that movie that are great. You guys each have your own comedic moments and the things that you guys do in that movie and the way that you guys interacted. Um yeah, it really felt like, cuz I've watched other movies about other bands and other things, and you watch it and you're like, yeah, so it's a movie about a band. But this one actually felt like, yeah, it's a movie about a band, and it felt like you could feel the closeness of the four of you kind of radiating off the screen. The chemistry that the four of you had was really good. So that was cool until you brought in Wolfman, but that's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
So all right, so Jonathan, you've played lawmen, you've played singers, you've played a roadhouse bouncer, you've played a superhero, you've done all kinds of things, and we're not your IMDb list is just huge. It's really what it shows, that you have a wide range of abilities and you're able to tackle all these different roles. But of all the characters that you've played, was there one that you had a more difficult time getting in touch with the what the character needed? Perhaps identifying with that character to be able to portray him.
Hmm. I'm very I have a very open center, so I don't judge characters. Like playing a killer in Prom Night,
Hmm.
that was a little bit more difficult. But when I found it in him why he was doing it, it made complete sense. So he was in love with the main character, and so anyone who got in the way, he realized there wasn't a rationale to it, so he had to get rid of them. So he got rid of all the people in his way so that he could be with his love. That made sense to me. So that's when I play those kind of characters. I'm always trying to find the rationale. The good
Hmm.
guy, the bad guy never thinks he's bad. Thinks he's doing the
No,
right thing.
no.
Um,
If in fact, if your villain is a truly a villain, they believe that they're in the right for what they're doing.
yeah, I
You
played a
know.
zombie like Bub in Day of the Dead, and he was difficult because he was really a brutal human being, a
Hmm.
rapist, and I had trouble with that. But as soon as I turned that he just didn't know any better with his life, and he was trying to change his life when he turned to this creature. Then this creature had this element to him because the creature wouldn't kill her. Like, why would the creature kill her? Just because he
Hmm.
was dealing with the dilemma inside of himself. So I've always been able to find those different layers in the characters that I've played. I'm sure there's been some that I've just was like, oh, I know. Um, I did this film, God, it was Texas Rising, and I
Hmm.
played Colonel Sherman, and it was what was written on the page was a very good script, very well written, but
Okay.
the true character, the what he was a real person in life. What he did wasn't in the script. Now he wasn't the star of the script, so um, it was a it was a big historical story about how Texas became its own state after it was won over by Mexico, and then we won it back. So it was this whole big historical thing, and I did a lot of research because I always do that because Tom Hanks taught me that. And I literally had to call Tom and said, "I don't. These are completely different. What do I like? This is they're lying about this part of the story, and I know it's very important. um, how do I address it? Like, do I talk to the writers beforehand? Do I just go along with it?" And he gave me great advice. He goes, just bring it up to him and see where that conversation will lead you, because the writer could have just went down that road because they needed to. And if
Right.
you're bringing this to the party, to your part, they may very well might say, yeah, this is great. We should include this. This is important. Can we do it so that it still fits in with what we're trying to tell? And that's what happened. The writer was completely like, oh, like he literally goes, oh my God, you're right, Jonathan. I remember reading that. I just took it down that road because I was the main character. It would help the main character if you had better difference. And um and we came to a good place, and it still wasn't completely the truth, but I got to tell the story and got to be a little bit more honest about my character. So that was one time.
All right, cool. All right. Now, in a similar vein, sometimes we do something and years later we'll look back at it and we'll say, you know what? I could do that better now. Is there a character that you've portrayed in the past that you would love to take another crack at, or either to continue their story or perhaps retell it or reframe it, restructure it?
Well, I don't think I did anything wrong the first time with Jonah Hex, but I would love to explore deeper, like we talked about earlier, the
Yeah,
complexities
absolutely.
of his origin story, uh, and how he dealt with life. His moral credo was just so unique and true. I think,
Hmm.
but his actions, the way he did things, I think people really could relate to it into today's society. The things that he was put up against, people could get behind him. I would love to do that.
No, and like we talked about pre-show, I think you did a fantastic job with Jonah Hex, and so I, for one, would be thrilled to see a Jonah Hex series, a Jonah Hex movie with you at the helm and running that, um, running that character, because I do think that there's so many stories with that character because of his moral complexity, because of his background, his history. And like we said earlier, he's wearing the Confederate suit, but he was a slave himself. And once he realized what was going on, it wasn't what he wanted to do anymore. But it's interesting how he got to the point of wearing the Confederate suit and what he was doing and why. And
Yeah,
it's a really interesting and very, very complex character that I think needs to have an opportunity to be better told.
yeah. William Shatner went up in space. Remember when he did that? When he came
Hmm.
down, he had this clarity. And one of the things he did, which blew my mind, it was like Jonathan Schaech needs to play Jonah Hex on a TV series, and he did it online. He made a whole pitch online. I'm sure he didn't just think that something came up to him or someone said something to him, but like I found him like I'm like looking at him at all like he's seeing the world a whole different way at 90 years old, coming back from space, and then he's sitting there fighting for me to be have my own television series for DC. I just thought that was great.
I mean, hey, if you're gonna have somebody in Hollywood, pitch for you to take over a series, he's right up there among the probably the top 5 guys with a little bit of a little bit of juice behind him still. They say, hey, this guy thinks he can get it done.
Captain Kirk steering the ship.
Yeah, who knew, man? That's crazy. All right, yeah. So yeah, Jonah Hex would be a great one. Yeah, you definitely didn't do anything wrong with it. You portrayed him very well. But yeah, that would be an opportunity to continue the story. So that'd be great.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right. Well, Jonathan, we've reached a point where we like to ask our guests a silly question. Now, in your honor, we're asking 2 silly questions because you're Johnathan Schaech. So we're going to ask you 2. So the first one, now I belong to on Facebook. There's a music group that I belong to, and we all share videos. And that thing you do is actually very popular inside of that music group. We have a that thing you do day. We share quotes and memes and gifs and gifs, however you want to call them, inside that group all the time. And I asked them, "Hey, I'm gonna be interviewing Johnathan Schaech. Is any questions anybody wants to ask of him?" This is the question that got asked the most. They want to know, are you still alone in your principles?
Oh man. Well, today I think I was alone in my principles. I picked my little boy up. He's 10 years old. He's about to turn 11, and he's playing football his first third year. And the big kid on the team tackled him, and
Ah,
he got squashed, and he was on the sidelines, and he was thinking he was hurt. And I said, "What's wrong, buddy? Where's it hurt?" And he goes, "Dylan tackled me." And I go, "Okay, so I know that it hurts inside, like the big kid tackled you, but where physically does it hurt?" He goes, "Daddy, Dylan tackled me." Dylan's like 3 times his size. So I was like, "Okay." So I'm alone in my principles are here, buddy, because I'm trying to get to the point like you're not hurt, you need to get back in there. So that was my alone in my principles moment today.
very good. Okay. All right. And now here's our second silly question. This is the one that we typically ask everybody. And this is how we like to close out our interviews, because now typically my co-host Kathleen is here, but she's under the weather and wasn't able to make it today. Um, so her daughter was out. She has a 5-year-old daughter. She was out and about somewhere with her daughter, and they asked her daughter this question, and Kathleen thought it was a little bit rude that it wasn't asked of adults. So here it is. Johnathan Schaech, what's your favorite dinosaur?
T-Rex.
Nice.
Yeah. I like T-Rex. Just grew up with T-Rex. Just can't get enough T-Rex.
Fair enough. No, that's a good answer, and it's a pretty solid answer. I think the three most popular responses to this question so far have been: number one is T-Rex, number two is either probably a tie between the Triceratops and the Stegosaurus, with the pterodactyl bringing up a not so distant third. They're right on the heels of the Triceratops.
Yeah,
So
if I knew the bigger T-Rex, I probably would have said him. What's the bigger
yeah,
one? I can't remember.
is that the Allosaurus?
The Megasaurus.
Something like that. We'll go with
Something
that.
like that.
We'll just call him Megasaurus. We'll make up a new one. We'll call him Megasaurus. All right, very cool. All right, so Johnathan, thank you so much for being on our show today. I have just enjoyed talking with you. Been a blast. But where can our guests, our listeners, our followers go to find out more about you and what you've got coming up?
Well, they can look for Blue Ridge on INSP. It plays every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. And there's other. If you go to INSP, they'll guide you to where to find Blue Ridge. There's
Okay.
different providers that they work with, and then you can find me at John Schaech on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. Facebook's not so Facebook. Someone stole my account for like 3 years, so people don't know if it's me or not. But yeah, that's me out there trying to get back my audience on Facebook. But yeah, Instagram and X or Twitter. I'm on those platforms. I like to check and talk to fans. That's what I love to
All
do.
right. Very cool. Well, we'll make sure to put those links down below in the show notes so that people can follow you and see what you've got coming up and what's going on out there as well. And this, guys, seems like a prime time to remind you that subscribing is the single most important thing you can do to help the FSF podcast continue to grow. It's how we get amazing guests like Johnathan Schaech here today to come on, talk to us, and share some really cool stories about what they're doing, and have some funny moments for you guys to be able to listen to. So please subscribe. It helps us more than we can ever explain. And make sure that if you're going to subscribe to us, go follow Johnathan on his platforms as well. So don't forget the guest. Just click follow, do the thing for Johnathan. But again, Johnathan, thank you so much for being on the show. And for everyone watching and listening, thank you so much. And goodbye.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you.
Copyright 2024 FSF Podcast. Reference to any specific product or entity mentioned on this podcast does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by FSF Podcast. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. If you have any questions about this disclaimer, please contact us via email at info@fsfpodcast.com.